Hi, I'm Olivia, and Mila back on the bed. She might be joining us. This is my fourth video today, and I keep having to kick her off my lap in order to go to get the next one. So, as I said in my last video, oh look, I'm wearing jeans finally. I remember to take the pajama bottoms off. But anyhow, so I've got 27 minutes. I have 27 minutes left on this phone. Let's see if I can knock this out in that time. Come on up. So, I'm still working on some of my favorite books from when I was younger. Today we are doing Up the Down Staircase by Kaufman. I'm hoping I have time to read all these little snippets from the book, but if not, we'll keep our eyes on it and see what we do. This was the first attempt at reading an ebook of a book that I enjoyed on my lunch hour and then doing my summary while walking around my store by dictating it. All these scripts that I'm doing right now were dictated and then transcribed and then cleaned up. So I can't carry the book back and forth with me because the lockers are only 1 square foot and I have to keep like my lunch supplies and things in there. I have like a little something cheesy or something that I buy in the store, and then I have like a little cup of applesauce and some dark chocolate on my lunch. And then I need like silverware. I have to keep silverware in there, and then also my Tylenol and things for my joint pain and things to get me through the day. So anyway, this is the first attempt. Now you know what I'm going to say. You can pause that and zoom in, and it won't be exactly that because of course I make edits as I go. So I went to a private high school, and we had a book list that was given to us our freshman year. Our freshman year, we had to read 1,600 pages, half of which, it wasn't my books, it was my pages, half of which had to come from that book list. The other half, because it was a private school, had to be approved by the teacher. I actually read Clan of the Cave Bear for my 800 pages my sophomore year, and my teacher didn't approve it because, of course, evolution, it was private school. That didn't go very well. But the teacher said it sounded interesting and she wanted to read it for herself just for fun. So there's that. Anyway, I believe that's where I found Up the Down Staircase. I would love to be able to find that book list. I literally posted on Facebook. I'm like, anybody who went to my high school, please, do you have a copy of the book list? And most were like, I haven't thought about the book list in decades. Why would you be asking this? Because I'd like to go through it for this channel and be like, hey, this is what my high school in the 1980s thought was edifying literature. And also because it will refresh my memory of some of the books I did read, because I've read so many books in my life. OMG. So, I think that's where I found Up the Down Staircase. My mom's like, oh yes, you need to read that. So I did. I was reminded of this book specifically because of the Haley Beck thing. Now, in future generations, if this channel ever takes off and people are like, hey, let's watch Olivia's Backlog. Haley Beck was a teacher in Arizona, I think, and her brother's some kind of influencer, I guess, and she's been accused of inappropriate conduct with at least one of her students. There's another teacher in the school who's been accused, another female teacher in the school who's been accused of the same thing. It's kind of, disturbing. So, that reminded me of a scene in this book. We will get to it. So, this is the story of Sylvia, who's a brand new teacher. She just graduated, and this is her first teaching job. She comes in with her ideas, with grand ideas about how she has a master's degree in Chaucer. But anyhow, she comes with stars in her eyes about how she's going to enlighten and enrich these children's lives. And she gets a rude awakening. All of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like administrative BS and stuff. Just, and of course, the fact that this is a school full of deprived kids, and so there's a lot of extra hardship and things that you have to deal with in teaching those kind of kids. And so this is basically, I thought it was her first year, but after reading I realized it's her first semester teaching. We start out with the book with a dialogue section of her trying to get control of her homeroom. And so the kids are unruly and they don't have enough seats. Some of the kids end up sitting on a radiator. Now, soon there's going to be a generation that doesn't know what a radiator is. So I'm going to go ahead and explain it. Basically, a radiator uses forced, like, heated water. And sometimes it's steam, but sometimes it's actual water. And it goes through, like, little, I'm, like, doing this over here where you can't see it. But it goes to, like, you've seen the pictures with the, yeah, it's kind of spirally and squarish. Anyway, basically, you go through the, and so some of the kids end up sitting on the radiator, which I can't imagine would be pleasant in winter. It's probably not too bad at the beginning of the school year, though. Anyway, so there's a dialogue section. 1 second. I think I'm in a slightly different position now because, well, we just had an interruption. Let's see. Okay, that's not bad. So, up the down staircase. So, the beginning of the book is, the beginning and end of the books are the only things that have dialogue. The middle of the book is epistolarian format. It's like interoffice memos and things from, Sylvia eventually sets up a suggestion box. It's little notes from the suggestion box. It's the context of her garbage can. It's all sorts of things. The book starts out with, I forgot to mark the very first page. No, I didn't. With the words, "Hi, teach." And everybody's like, and the kids are all like, "She's so pretty. Look at her. She's a teacher. Why is she's, you know," and things like that. And she has trouble getting control of the classroom. She's told the homeroom's going to go twice as, they announced that homeroom's going to go twice as long and to ignore the bells. And the bell goes off and everybody leaves anyhow. It's a mess. And she meets the teacher who's going to end up being her mentor, B. Our protagonist, Sylvia Barrett. I told you that already. B. Schachter is going to be the teacher who turns out to be her mentor. And she says she's got an English class labeled SS, and she doesn't know what SS stands for. It turns out that it stands for special/slow, which are the kids that aren't functioning at grade level. The more difficult classes are given to the newest teachers, and therefore, you know, you get better classes, easier classes as you get more experience, which seems counterintuitive. One of the recurring characters in this is J.J. McHabe. He signs himself as ADMASST, and so Sylvia refers to him, I'm going to use this word once, and we're going to call him McHabe throughout the rest of it. She refers to him as Admiral Ass. And that all, you know, it sends out nonsensical memos like, send, you know, any of your students who didn't come in today, send them to me, kinds of things. We see some of the hardships of working in a low-income school district, like they're supposed to be reading the Mill on the Floss, and all they have is Julius Caesar, and they don't have enough copies of Julius Caesar for everybody in the class, and the kids can't bring their own copies of Julius Caesar into school because they might be incorrectly edited. Incorrectly edited? Okay. So she decides maybe what she can bring is she can bring a recording of Sir John Gielgud reading Julius Caesar, and McCabe yells at her for being too disruptive and loud in her classroom. So she gets notices from the kids in her homeroom. One kid has to quit to get a job to help with his family, followed immediately by a note saying not to let your kids drop out because education's important. And I suspect it was the same way that it works now, and it probably the same way in New York that it works in Texas, but the amount of money the school gets depends on how many kids attend. And so they probably want the kids to stay in because the school doesn't get enough money as it is. Imagine if they don't. So we get, at the end of the day, I realize it kind of reminds me of the TV show Welcome Back, Kotter in a way. That was a TV show that started about 10 years after Up the Down Staircase was written, set at a remedial class in an inner city school. This was in Brooklyn. The official origin story is that it's based on Gabe Kaplan's, that's the creator and star's, time in high school where he was an underachiever, but Up the Down Staircase was a bestseller, so I can't imagine the creators were completely uninfluenced by it. We get some about how poorly maintained the classroom is. I'm just reading the Cliff's Notes of my Cliff's Notes here because I've got, Spark Notes, I guess they call it nowadays. Because I've only got 27 minutes and I've got 10 pages to get through here. How poorly maintained the classroom is. The window breaks the first day of class, and she sends a message down to maintenance, and Grayson, the maintenance man, sends up a message that just writes "no one down here" and sends it back up with the messenger. We also began a series of letters to Sylvia's friend from college, Ellen. Sylvia tells Ellen that there's kids who have there's special high schools for kids with have an aptitude for a trade. There are kids who have there are special schools for kids who have aptitude for the arts. There are special schools for kids who have academic aptitude, and everybody else ends up at places like this, like Calvin Coolidge, like the high school in this book. Somebody just closed a bedroom door, and Mila's like very interested in what's going on over there. She then lists all the other teachers, the teacher who wants to be the kid's friend, the hot teacher all the girls have crushes on, and since this is 1960s, she does not mention that it's likely some of the boys have crushes on him as well. One of her colleagues wants to fix all of the girls like dogs so they don't reproduce, and then just kick him out of school. He is not joking or exaggerating for effect. Principal's hardly ever seen. He basically comes out for like assemblies and hides out in his office. He even has a private restroom. Bester is the head of the English department. He's an example of the Peter principle, that people keep getting promoted until they can't do the job anymore. Basically, Bester was a really amazing English teacher. He was like the best of the best, and they eventually made him the head of the department, which is not, administration is not his strong suit. Teaching is. So the teachers don't really have somebody who understands the administrative side of things to help them. And so they're fighting against that as well. She's in another letter to Ellen, Sylvia tells her that some of the students have started to emerge to her as like individuals. And she does the math and realizes that she gets 6.25 minutes per week with each child. She starts to list the ones she's noticed. Harry Kagan is a budding politician. Alice Blake, who's lost in dreams of true romance. Joe Ferrone, who's one of the first kids name dropped in the book, who's later accused of stealing a wallet. This causes stress between her and McCabe. And Joe Ferrone is an underachiever. He apparently is really bright, but his grades don't reflect that. And of course, nowadays I'm like, a lot of these kids, these underachieving kids, are probably some flavor of neurodivergent. They probably have ADD or autism or any of the other various neurodivergences. Even gifted kids are neurodivergent, believe it or not. If you ever, they're not the best of the typical kid. They're also neurodivergent. And she explains to Ellen that she can't teach the kids like she wants to because there's no time. There's just too much administrative stuff, and they've still not fixed the middle drawer of her desk, the like pencil drawer thing is missing, and she's supposed to keep stuff in there, but there's no where to keep it. And McCabe is like, well, don't blame the failure of your equipment on your inability to do your job or something. Now, she asks them to tell what they got out of English, and I think I bookmarked that part. Where is it? During my many years of frequenting school, I was well satisfied with my instruction. English is a very important language to study, especially if it's the language we speak daily. Since most of us are in high school, we are interested in getting an English education. I believe English to be of great importance to me, and I will try in my next future to increase my knowledge. English outshines all other subjects. I've always had good marks because I am a worker, and I feel that anything a teacher tells me is a benefit to me. Speaking, which is my specialty, composition, which also attracts my attention, writing perfect sentences with punctuation where it really belongs, and many others of grave importance have been taught to me with excellent results. I was likewise impressed by the good work of my classmates. I hope to achieve further progress in my chosen program of study with an excellent teacher like yourself. Basically, he says nothing about English. And you know, some of the other kids are like, I had Dr. Bester for 1 week, while my regular teacher took a rest cure, and we liked him, but I feel he developed a false character to cover up. This false character consisted of a stern face and remarks, but everyone saw a good teacher shining through the fake false window of sternness. He roused all our somewhat hidden interest in English, and he worked our head off for it. That's, a little bit more explaining what she got out of English than Kagan's response. So now for a little bit of background. One of the students in the book, one of her regular students in the book is a black boy named Edward Williams, and he always has Edward Williams Esquire. And Edward is bussed in. Now, Brown versus Board of Education, if you've been in education or law or anything like that, even just in passing, you've probably heard of Brown. The Brown decision decided that separate schools are inherently unequal. And so if two schools were within the same district, they weren't allowed to have a black school and a white school. Same like living area. The kids had to go whatever school was closest to them. Ruby Bridges, I should have looked this up, I'm sorry, was the first. She endured a great deal of abuse when she started school, and there's a famous painting by Norman Rockwell of her being brought to school for the first time, being brought to the white school for the first time. And there was a later decision called Swan versus Charlotte Mecklenburg Board of Education determined that busing kids from brown schools to white schools and vice versa in order to force integration was constitutional. I was a small child when Swan was decided, and my mom, who never really interacted with very many people of color, she liked Latinos, but she'd never interacted with many black people, saw them as other and therefore frightening. So anyhow, inner city schools became predominantly Catholic because of what's known as white flight, and also white families opening private schools that are not bound by the court's decisions because they're private school. If you're in a private school, you can let anybody you want in or leave anybody you want out. So we find out that Edward is one of these kids that's being bused. He's being pulled from a predominantly black neighborhood and sent into this predominantly white school. So everything he writes ends with talking about the school being prejudiced, and I don't know whether Kaufman's being serious or not, because I'm sure this kid, even if he doesn't face like outright bigotry, is dealing with microaggressions. I'm sure there's little things, your credit to your race kind of BS sort of things going on. So I can see why he points out this is something that's going on all the time. I also, just as an aside, don't know what the descriptivists would say about the writing, because my mom was definitely on or near the spectrum, and her special interest was grammar, and that made her very, very strongly a prescriptivist. There was a right way and a wrong way to do everything, and you'd better do it right, period. My head looks really small. Maybe I should have raised this up. Oh well, too late now. This is my 4th video. So, in African American Vernacular English, or whatever they're calling it now, I think that's the term, AAVE, was particularly unsettling to her. And so, I don't know, really, I grew up being so close to such a hardcore prescriptivist that I don't know, I'm assuming the descriptive is like, oh, that's interesting. This person spells writing Writting. That's interesting. One of the characters in the suggestion box keeps signing your enemy instead of your enemy throughout. And in one, you see her mark it up. So, we end this section with Joe Ferrone calling Sylvia a phony. Sylvia responds by asking him to give her a chance, and he says he wishes he could believe her. He doesn't really believe that she wants what's best for the kids in general, and him in particular. So we go back to another letter to her friend, and the friend finished grad school and then got married and had a baby, or finished college and had a baby, and so it's all domestic stuff. The letters she's getting are about remodeling their house and things, and it's kind of a nice break for Sylvia from her life. And so she talks about how worried she is about Joe Ferrone, because he's a bright kid, but he's going to get lost if nobody helps him, and if he doesn't let himself be helped. There you go. There's the thing about neurodivergence. I read something recently about neurodivergent kids with lots of potential, and how harmful it can be to say you've got a lot of potential, because Ellie Brosh, her little cartoon about depression, somebody's listing, it's, talking about happiness and joy and enjoying sunsets and sunrises and things, and Ellie's little ponytail character is like, are you just listing things I can't do? And that's kind of how it is for a neurodivergent kid with lots of potential. If you just worked harder, you're just listing things I can't do. I've got an executive function. How am I supposed to do this? For me, it got a lot better in college. I had this problem in high school, because in high school it's like we're all doing exactly the same thing. I can see the logic behind me learning how to write up a lab report properly if it were something as a general thing. But you do that once, and now you've done it. You don't have to. Why are you doing this every time? Because it's not like I'm discovering something new. We're all doing the same thing. It was very frustrating for me. That kind of thing in particular was very frustrating for me. In middle school, I ended up having to write all of my lab reports over a weekend, because I wasn't turning them in, because it was just, my executive dysfunction was like, what's the purpose of this? I don't understand why I have to do this exact same way, every time. I was pretty young for middle school, too. I was also a little younger than the rest of my peers. But, you're just listing things I can't do. And so it's very frustrating if you don't give the neurodivergent kid the support they need. It's very hard for them to, I got 5 minutes. It's very hard for them to, fulfill their potential. And so Bester's going to visit the classes, and B recommends they do a writing exercise, and more about the suggestion box. One boy just wants to sit next to Lyndon Rosen, who's the boy crazy girl in the class, and we go back to Sylvie and B again. I remember mostly the conversation between Sylvie and B, and the inter-office memos, which this day would be emails. In this next section, we get a little thing about what the students got out of books. They read the Odyssey and something called Myths and Their Meanings, and another letter to her friends where she talks about how she's been offered a place at a small college in Vermont where you don't need a PhD to teach. She's real tempted, but she talks about the students she's working with and how many of them don't want to go on to college, and how many don't even want to finish high school, and some can't even afford to stay in high school. And their mother was ill, and they were the only source of income for the family. She goes into their backstories and reads their backstories and their histories and things. Vivian Payne is dealing with a weight problem and thinks the teachers hate her, and Sylvia says the teachers don't hate her, she hates herself. After they finish the Odyssey, they decide to read a book. They're reading a book of short stories, one of which was about a person who wronged another, and they got into a lively discussion of who was wrong, and so she decided to have a fake court case about it. And she decided to sign up the kid, Jose Rodriguez, who's the one who signs himself just me in his thing. And it really helped his confidence. And he walked out of school, he walked out of the room like he was still the judge. Sylvia's chided for not turning in her homeroom attendance, and she says that Linda Rosen had to go to the nurse's office, and all the boys followed her, and she didn't have a quorum, so she couldn't take attendance, and gets chided up for being flip. My last video was Freaky Friday, and being flip is one of the turns of phrases that I got from there that I still use for her failure to take attendance. So I bought a copy of the book in case I wanted to read anything to you from it, and I would love to, but I've got 3 minutes left. So they have a faculty review, and Sylvia breaks her foot. Oh, that's later. Um, they have open house, what they refer to as open school, and most of the parents that she wants to see, none of them come in. We don't even hear from Joe Ferrone's parents at all. So now the Haley Beck part. So she finds the book. She finds the notebook of the woman the girl who believes in true love. I marked it. She finds her notebook, and there's the. Did I mark it? Yes, I did. She finds the notebook, and there's drafts of a love letter to Paul Berenger. And she gives him the love letter, and he marks it up. And Alice writes a note and for Sylvia, and then jumps out of a window. She doesn't die, but she's grievously injured, and this being the 1960s, she's in the hospital for the rest of the book. And Paul says that he did the only thing he could in that situation. Now, it's better than Haley Beck's accused of doing, which is taking advantage of the kid. But it's still just a horrifying way to respond to it. And Sylvia and Paul had been having this kind of budding romance, and this ends it. Just dead. There's no more budding romance after that. And so she later on, then there's all the excitement that happens afterwards, and they have their faculty review, not review like job reviews, but like singing and dancing. And Sylvia hurts herself. Let's see. Oh, I got 10 more minutes by deleting that app. So I'm going to have to paste these together. This should be fun. So they have I might as well just cut kind of to the end. There's other things that go on. She accidentally starts a riot in the school by suggesting the kids go into the teacher lunchroom and take chairs so the kids can all sit down, and causes more problems. And she then they have their faculty review. They have the faculty review, and a riot happens, and then a piece of the backdrop falls and breaks Sylvia's foot. And again, this is the 1960s, so she spends a lot of time in the hospital, and she's trying to leave the school, leave Calvin Coolidge in favor of going to Willowdale, and she the paperwork keeps getting messed up. Meanwhile, she gets responses from her students. She gets things from her students because they miss her. Her special slow class sent her this ugly thing that might be a candy dish, but could also be a ashtray. She's not real sure. And her homeroom writes this like round robin get well letter to her, in which all the kids who have been putting stuff in her box anonymously. There's a kid that calls himself the Hawk. There's the one that signs himself your enemy, your Emily. There's a girl that calls herself Doodlebug, and they all come out and tell her who they really are. And it's kind of emblematic of her seeing them for who they really are, and it's really, really heartwarming. I find it interesting because, back, she's in there, and then it's like, how do you, what's she going to do? Is she going to stay or is she going to go? And then we turn the page. There you go. We turn the page and we have, let me see, I never read the afterword. We have this page. Hey, she's back. You got out of the hospital? Hooray, we got Barrett. How's your foot? And then she starts handing out the cards for them to take attendance and things. And she's got way more control over the class than she did at the beginning of the book. And at the very end of the book, a kid comes up to her and says, "Hey, teach." And she responds, "Hey, pupe," indicating that she has finally accepted the way things work at Calvin Coolidge and is going to stay there. And it's really heartwarming. The scene with the love story, with the love letter being graded, is just heartrending. And you're like, and I don't mention the budding relationship between Sylvia and Paul because I know how it ends, and I hate it. I don't hate the way it ends. I hate the fact that so much time is wasted on this romance that really doesn't accomplish anything. So that I know is not going to go anywhere, and I know what kind of person Paul is from having read the book the first time, and I don't want them together. And so I realized that I kind of block it out. So, but it's such a good book. I mean, more than 8 million copies sold. One of those is now mine. Actually, 2 of them are. That's another one where I can't find my original copy. My original copy's got the original cover, but it's not hard copy. It's not hardcover, it's paperback. So it's probably from this was written like 1962, 63. And it's from probably 1965, because it was the paperback. But it's such a good book. I highly recommend it. Go out and get it. You know the drill. If you see anything, if you read anything that you want me to read, you leave it in the comments. Thank you for clicking on this. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, I guess. I'll see you in the next one. This is going to be fun to paste together. I will. Those thumbs ups are definitely sarcastic, because I'm like, we'll see how it goes. So I will talk to you later, and see you in the next one. And now I'm out of space, so I guess the next 2 videos will be after I clean these up and upload them and delete them from my phone. So, but this is going to cover the next month, and I will talk to you later. Bye for now.